YouTube. So if you guys have been following me for a while, you know that I don't normally come live around this time. This is not my normal Thursday live time. So usually go live about 11 o'clock my time on Thursdays. So if you follow my community page, we always give updates as to when I'll be going live. And for those of you who were flexible and found me here at 2, welcome and thank you for being flexible. I was just on a panel with Dr. Zach Bush and several other doctors talking about nutrition, the gut microbiome, and human performance. And it was really, really interesting. And I want to kind of recap a couple of things I learned. And then I want to dive into some new research I'm finding on fasting, keto, and COVID specifically. So anyway, I want to cover both of those topics before I open it up for Q&A. So the first thing that I just want to point out is we love fasting, right? We love it. It's a great way to manage insulin. And we also have to take amazing care of the food we're eating. So on this discussion, there was so much rich information on how different foods can support our gut bacteria. And when we support our gut bacteria, we can really start to make neurotransmitters that help our brain function normally. So the first thing I want to just point out is please don't forget that fasting heals and food heals, okay? They both heal. So, and a part of that food healing, I know we've had a lot of discussions here about carnivore, vegan. Don't lose sight of your microbiome. You have to feed these gut bacteria, and you've got to feed them with good prebiotic and probiotic rich foods. And if you're not familiar with what those are, please go to my Instagram. We've done squares talking about prebiotic, probiotic foods a lot. But you have these bacteria that need to be fed, and when you feed them, the body starts to heal. So just like when you start to, take your eating window and you compress it, the body starts to heal. So that is a key thing that I want to say. Second thing that came up that was really interesting to me, and it was from one of the neuroscientists on the discussion, was about it was carbs, bad fat, and salt. So it was a combination of bad fat, salt, and carbohydrates in general are causing a dopamine response in our brain that is making us addicted to food. So think about that for a moment. Most of you that are watching me on my different platforms, you're trying to make some changes. And if you're finding those changes to be difficult, I want to come back to this concept that what makes it difficult is that you have been trained to be addicted to food. So let's start by changing your fats. It's called a lateral change, and it's quite simple to do. Get off of the bad fats, get onto the good fats. And that's going to tie into some of the research we're seeing on COVID. So I really want to emphasize that. Second thing is that when you're eating a lot of sugared rich foods, a lot of foods that are packed with different salt in them, that it's creating a dopamine response in your brain that is causing you to continue to be addicted to it. So let's bring the sugar down. Let's change the fat. Let's start to bring those carbs down. And over time, if you do it gradually, you will find that your fasting efforts are so much easier. Now, what a lot of you are discovering with fasting, and I had a really cool conversation with Dave Asprey today, on Monday. I brought him on to the Resetter podcast, and one of the things that he talked about is how when we start to move away from these food addictions, is that we reset our dopamine pathways. So we've talked about that here. But when we talk about resetting our dopamine pathways, what we're doing is think of your dopamine receptor sites as I almost think of it as a sea anemone. If you've ever been at the beach and you poke a sea anemone, it closes up. That's what happens to the receptor sites when we've overwhelmed them over and over and over again with the wrong foods. So we see it with insulin, we see it with dopamine. So if you could start to reset these dopamine receptor sites, they will open back up for you, and the littlest things will bring you joy. And it will be everything from having an interaction with somebody to enjoying your food again. But the way that the food industry has conditioned us is it's conditioned us to be addicted to food. And so we need more of the bad food and more of the bad food and more of the bad food to get that same dopamine response. So if you change your fats, you lower your sugar, you bring your carbs down, you get off a lot of the salt-rich foods, you can switch over, we love Redmond sea salt, switch over to more of a healing salt like Redmond sea salt. Now what you're doing is you're resensitizing your dopamine receptor sites, and you're allowing those to open up. And when they do, you're going to enjoy a cup of broccoli. You're going to enjoy a salad. You're going to get more enjoyment out of your food because your body is not conditioned for that next dopamine craving. So I want to point that out. That was a huge aha for me in this discussion. Second thing is, let's talk about this research study that I'm going to put out in a video tomorrow. So again, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been really contemplating why we have so many immune compromised people in the world right now. And to add to that discussion, I've been really wondering, why is it that you can take a couple, one of them tests positive for COVID, and the other one doesn't ever test positive, but they're around each other all the time. So what is it that's happening inside the body that is causing COVID to take over? And that's what you're going to see on the video tomorrow that I've got. I have a new research study for you. It was put out in September, so very, very recent. And it talks specifically about the power of us accessing our ketogenic pathways. And I know you guys, I'm preaching to the choir, but remember, just for a moment, you have two energetic pathways. You have two ways that you will gain energy. One is from sugar. And this, when I say sugar, it means you're eating all day long. So when we're talking about this dopamine reaction that your body's trying to, is getting, it's in this, the world is stuck in this addiction to eating, to bad eating. So we've got that as one way that our body is giving us energy, our cells are giving us energy, and the other way is from fat burning. And that's what we've been talking about here and teaching you here, we teach in my academy. This fat burning is called the ketogenic pathway, and they are showing when you access this pathway, you literally can stop viral replication, not only of COVID, but of a lot of different viruses. So viruses are like parasites. They need you to live off of them. So with these two pathways, you get to decide which way you're going to be and how you're going to allow that virus to thrive. So I'm not going to tell you anymore. It's coming out tomorrow because I got the science, and there's actually a very specific diet that they dive into. There's a specific fasting, there's specific oils, there's specific foods that this study looked at to see, how do we stop viral replication? How do we access this ketogenic pathway so that we don't find that our body is as vulnerable? And in that, I just want to point this out, is if we can stop viral replication within ourselves, then we can stop a contagious experience with this virus. That's how huge this research is. So tomorrow morning, it's going to be on my Facebook. Please, we premiere these. And so it's kind of fun as a community to have everybody sit and watch it together. If you resonate with it, please send it out. I always do these videos for you. This particular video is done for the world. It's so that we can start to take our power back. We can step out of fear, and we can see what we can do personally to be able to stop the spread. And this needs to be discussed. So, and as always, we don't know how censorship works. We have tried to figure it out, and we haven't quite completely figured it out. So your shares make a big difference. So please, if you resonate with it, share it with your neighbor and share it with your loved one, because we're all in this together, right? Okay, with that, I am going to open it up for questions. And then the other thing I want to tell you is stay tuned to my channel. We're going to dive into minerals a little bit more. We've got Fast Training Week coming up in a couple of weeks, so we're going to dive into that. We're also going to dive into some of the fasting hacks that I learned from Dave Asprey on Monday. So stay tuned. We'll be diving into that. And as always, if you guys want to know how to put these pieces together in a guided experience, the month of January, I'm doing a fasting experience for the whole month. And we're going to do it together as a community. And I've brought in some incredible minds for us to learn from. So Paul Saladino will be back to talk about carnivore. Will Cole will be there to talk about keto vegetarian. I've got Thomas Daylauer, who's going to come and talk about intermittent fasting. I also want to dive into, he's got so much I want to pick his brain on. He's got some great ideas on keto on a budget and fitness. So I want to dive into that. Maria Emmerich's going to come talk about how we can be cooking with keto and carnivore. Daniel Pompa is going to come talk about feast famine cycling. And we just found out yesterday that Jesse Eitzler, if you don't follow Jesse Eitzler on Instagram, I really encourage you to, is going to come talk about mindsets that help us around making changes to our habits. And this man is the mindset king. So he's got some incredible gems to offer us. So Reset Experience, and we've been doing a cyber special all week. So $100 off, that ends tomorrow. So if you're interested, just put Reset Experience in the notes or in your comments and my team will send you a link. Okay, let's get to people's questions.
Okay, well the first questions are over on the community page.
Okay.
Because that's where those people were kind enough to let us know ahead of time.
Okay.
And Kiki has a few of the
Okay.
questions, and Kiki wants to know about what you think around fasting and fertility.
Okay.
So
great. Yeah.
Maybe talk about that, and maybe men and women. Is there a difference?
Yeah, I assume she's asking, that's a great question, but I assume she's asking for women. So yeah, so Kiki on our community page asked about fasting for fertility. And here's what you need to know. You need your hormones to be at their best when, and you probably already know that, when you're trying to conceive a baby. And one of the challenges we have right now is women have never been taught how to look at their hormones. So we are not knowing when to fast for our hormones. We don't know when to eat for our hormones. So let me give you the simple version. Look at your cycle, your 28-day cycle. On day 12, you need to make estrogen, okay? The best way to feed estrogen is with nuts, seeds. One of the best estrogen building foods, believe it or not, is dried apricots, not a keto food, and a lot of leafy greens. You have a whole system inside your gut called the estrobolome, and it helps to break estrogen down and make it usable for your cells. So the first thing, when you're looking at your 28-day cycle, around day 12, around that, day 11, day 12, I don't know what your hormonal profile is, but you are going to need to lean into those foods, and you're going to need to up your greens and really nurture estrogen, okay? So that's the first thing. Intermittent fasting's fine that day. Wouldn't be doing anything more than intermittent fasting. So on that day, especially if we're talking about conception. Okay, then day 21, you need to have progesterone. The greatest progesterone foods are beans, potatoes, squashes, a lot of the root vegetables. So these are incredible foods to get a big surge of progesterone. If you've struggled with fertility, you are not going to want to be in a ketogenic state around day 21. I've done some videos on this. I actually go back to our community page. We did a square kind of showing some different zones, because some of you, if you've been trying to get pregnant and you've really struggled, then you might need to start to pull out of a ketogenic state around day 18 and build up your progesterone around day 18, so you're peaking at day 21. But around that time, from day 21 until the time you bleed, You don't want to be in a longer fast. You want to be in more of an easy fast. So if you want to go 13 hours for intermittent fasting, totally fine. When you eat during that time, I want to encourage you to lean into the foods I mentioned, but I also want to encourage you to eat good quality food. This doesn't mean go to the ice cream store and eat a bunch of junk. This means, hey, I'm trying to make a baby. So around day 12, I need to nourish my hormones so I can ovulate and an egg can be released. This is not a time to go into restriction. This is a time to lean into food. This is not a time to go into long fasts. It's a time to lean into food. Okay, after ovulation occurs, you can fast a little longer. You can go into keto a little bit more. Now when you're getting closer to day 21, okay, not a time to go into an extreme deprivation mode. It's a time to use food to build up those hormones. So let me know, Kiki. I hope that helps. Sequoia added in a question of, well, what about men for fertility? And I want to point this out. Insulin controls all your sex hormones, including the sex hormones that men have. So it is in all of our best interest to make sure we've got insulin under control. Doesn't mean, again, that the whole world should go keto. Remember, we're meant for metabolic switching, but we've got a world of insulin-resistant people, and we're insulin-resistant because of toxins in our environment, because our cells are congested with too many bad fats, because we've been overdoing insulin, because we've been overdoing carbs. So for a man and fertility, the best thing you can do is regulate insulin, and your hormones will balance out. For a woman, we've got to really look at not overdoing something as good as fasting at key times of her cycle. So hope that helps, but it's an important topic we need to think about.
Since we're sort of on this topic, do you want to talk about, because we get this question periodically, nursing or being pregnant and fasting?
Okay.
Let's touch on that.
So leading up to pregnancy, it's really beneficial to manage insulin and do the formula I just taught you. Once you get pregnant, this is not a time to start detoxing with fasting. This is not a time to start going into deprivation of any kind. So during pregnancy, I am not a fan of fasting. I'm a fan of food. And you want to eat really good foods. You want to lean into more of your good oils. You want to lean into those foods that will support a healthy microbiome. Remember that you are going to pass your microbiome down to your child. So the greatest thing you could do for 9 months is eat more plant-based foods that will support that healthy microbiome. Lean into the nuts and the seeds. It's not a time to go keto. It's a time to go, okay, I'm going to build up that microbiome and I'm going to keep my hormones at a good level. I'm not going to let insulin get out of control. That still applies to the pregnant woman. But I am going to work on my microbiome so I pass down a healthy microbiome. When you're nursing, you can intermittent fast more. You just want to be careful that you don't do too much 17-hour fasting and beyond. And the reason for that is you're going to stimulate autophagy. And autophagy, remember, is the body's way of repairing the cell by killing organic matter inside the cell, like pathogens like viruses and bacteria. So what you're going to want to do when you're nursing is not push bacteria out of the cell. And you definitely, with autophagy, we will stimulate apoptosis, where you'll create cellular death. And then that cell, when it dies, any toxin in that cell will get redistributed. And a lot of times it'll go into the fat, which is in your breasts, and will come out into your breast milk. So intermittent fasting for nursing, fabulous, totally good, but not longer. And again, let's work on building up your nutrients with good quality food.
Great. That was really good. We're getting a bunch of questions now about different aspects of pregnancy and reproduction. So,
okay, cool.
But I think that covered that for now. Jumping back over to other questions. Sjögren's syndrome. Marilyn wants to know if you know anything about fasting helping that.
From what I know about Sjögren's is it's a autoimmune condition, and all autoimmune conditions are benefited by more of the 24-hour fasts because it repairs the gut. Every autoimmune condition has a gut piece to it. And then remember that 70% of any autoimmune condition is environmental. And so more autophagy fasting, more detoxing, really paying attention to all the toxins that are coming in. So that's the main thing I would say about that particular condition.
Okay. I'm skipping over the ones that are specific to medical conditions, or especially we're not going to talk about anything related to medication.
With medication, it's tricky, you guys, and I wish I could just give you like the really clear pinpoint answer, but what we want to create with our doctors is a collaborative experience where we're able to ask them, like, when can I get off this medication? How would I use this medication when I'm fasting? That's the world I want to live in, where the patient and the doctor are collaborating and they're having good, thoughtful discussions. So one of the things that I do here on my channel is I always link to science because that's important to the medical world. So if you have a doctor who put you on a medication and you're curious if you should fast while on that medication, go to your doctor and ask them. And if they say, absolutely no, absolutely not, I would dig a little deeper and I would say, tell me why, what's the research on it that you're seeing? If they don't know, send them here. A lot of doctors are sending a lot of patients are sending their doctors here, and a lot of doctors are sending their patients here. So use the resources that I have here with the science to be able to bring a conversation together. I do know, just to give you some science behind medication and fasting, a couple tricks that you've got to be careful of. Let's use thyroid, for example. When you're in a fasted state, a lot of times you absorb your medication more efficiently. And this can be where now you're having a stronger reaction to your medication. So you might want to look at taking your medication in an eating window. I know this creates a problem for those of you who are like, well, I'm supposed to take my medication in the morning. So then, okay, well, think about this. Could you eat in the morning and fast starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Flip your fasting window. So those are some tricks we've seen in our resetter community.
Or you eat breakfast before and then you eat dinner, right?
You could do like a Ramadan.
Hours. Yeah.
That's actually a very good point. You could do like a Ramadan fast where you eat breakfast and then fast for 13 hours. And then, so that would, remember, that's intermittent fasting. So eat breakfast, take your medication, fast for 13 hours. If you want to fast for 14 hours, there's been great research. You can even dry fast for 14 hours. There's been great research on dry fasting and turning genes off and upregulating positive genes. And so you could get that medication in by doing a 14-hour dry fast. And so that's another option. So there's always flexibility.
Just so people aren't confused, what are you dry fasting? What's your maximum?
Dry fast max, I will say it here over and over and over again. I've never said it any different. 12 to 24 hours, please do not go more than that because we do not have more information and research on that. I have never, ever, ever said more than 24 hours. Dry fast is no food, no water. I can't find any more research showing that more than 24 hours dry fast is good. It's dangerous.
Okay, this is again in the community section. Kimberly.
Okay.
Any guidance on what to do if everything that she eats makes her tired? Fasted or not? She fasted for 41 hours.
Yeah.
She had an avocado and felt tired and miserable.
Yeah, that sucks.
People aren't hearing me, so you might have to.
Okay, people aren't. Yeah, so here was the question is, everything she eats is making her tired. This was a question that was in the community page. Okay, so let's unpack that. So what part of the cell gives you energy? That's your mitochondria. When we have sick mitochondria, our food doesn't give us energy. So the first thing you're going to want to do is work on repairing your mitochondria. Okay, how do we repair the mitochondria? And that is actually more simple than it may sound. So the first is sugar burners have sick mitochondria. Fat burners, tapping into the ketogenic pathway, start to repair their mitochondria. So practice metabolic switching. Intermittent fasting, start to do a few more longer fasts. You want to put some pressure on those mitochondria. Dave Asprey, he was saying the other day on when I interviewed him on the Resetter podcast, he's like, mitochondria are inherently lazy. They don't want to work. So you have to put some pressure on them to work. So if you want to wake up those mitochondria, you're going to need to start going in and out of different fasts. If you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not getting any energy from my food, I'm fasting 15 hours, it's time to fast 17. Okay, well, I'm fasting 17, go 24. I'm fasting 24, go 36. Like, start working the fasting ladder so that you can wake those mitochondria up. Okay, second thing those mitochondria need, they need good fats. So start supplying those mitochondria with the healthy fats, specifically MCT oil. Give you a little glimmer on the video that's coming out tomorrow. We're gonna have a lot of discussion here on this channel and on Instagram about MCT oil. Very powerful for those mitochondria. So make sure you have no bad fats and you're doing a lot of good fats and you're leaning into more of the MCT oils. Okay, the third thing that really makes those mitochondria very sluggish is toxins. So make sure you're not doing dirty keto. Make sure you're getting all chemicals out of your food. Are you eating organic? Those kind of things matter when you tell me I've been eating and I'm getting exhausted from food. So start with those three things: more fasting, better fats, less toxins. So and work on this metabolic switching. We've done a lot of talk here on this channel about that. The other piece that is really important to talk about when food is not working for you, especially healthy food, is you've got to look at gut dysbiosis. And remember that you've got bacteria. Everything that I just talked about with the metabolic switching, that's all human cells. But you're 10 times more bacteria than you are human cells. So are you leaning into probiotic foods, polyphenol foods, fermented foods? Are you taking products like Ion Biome that really helps to repair the inner lining of the mucosal membrane? Are you doing bone broth? Break your fast with bone broth so you can get some of the glycine in bone broth to start to nourish that inner lining. Really dive into repairing the microbiome. We are not at a place anymore, guys, where repairing the microbiome means taking a probiotic. We are now elevated the conversation to repairing the microbiome is around food, and we know the 24-hour fast is a beautiful way to start to repair that microbiome. So are you fasting 24 hours at least once a week so we can reboot those stem cells? So that, I don't know who was that asked that question. If you're exhausted when you eat and you feel like you're eating the right things, then start working that checklist that I just gave.
Okay,
so.
Great. We did have one question about what would you do with fasting and COVID. That's coming tomorrow.
Yeah, fasting and COVID. Yes, and yes. You know what's really interesting, you guys, is that when this first happened, we just went to the science and we were like looking at it over and over and over again. We didn't really have enough science on COVID. Now here we are, 9 months later, we got a lot of science, and we start to know that there are certain things like autophagy that helps and stimulating the ketogenic pathway. But tomorrow on the video, I'm going to show you exactly a way you can do it that's going to be quite fun to do. So I love when I don't come to you and say, just suffer a little more with your fasting to get this great benefit. I actually think tomorrow's video is a solution that the whole world could do. So I'm excited. Go watch it tomorrow.
Great. This is from Carmen, and this is a great question because we don't get this one often. I think she's doing it with her. Her daughter's 15 and doing keto and fasting.
Awesome.
She lost 25 pounds.
Okay.
Down to 100,
I'll repeat it in a moment
110.
here. Okay.
How should she continue? Sounds like she might
The
be at
daughter
her
who's 15.
Right. She might be at her target weight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Carmen's daughter's 15 and she's been fasting and she dropped some weight, which is great. 15, and she's been intermittent fasting.
Just
And keto.
Fasting and keto, yeah.
Okay. So 15-year-olds can intermittent fast if it's their choice. I just want to point that out. We don't force children to fast or teenagers to fast. It has to be their choice. So if it's their choice, then great. And she sounds like she dropped weight and she's at her set point. Okay, love this. Gosh, I just want to teach every teenager this. It would just...
I thought you might like this.
Yeah, I love this question. Like, oh, could we just pull all the teenagers together so we can talk about this? Okay, fasting is great. 15 hours, perfect for a teenager. And when you eat, you need to eat. So keto is great some days where you're bringing those carbs down, but you're going to need to make sure that teenagers, because there's a growing brain, because there's growing body parts, I wouldn't be doing keto all the time. I would be relying on nature's food. I would be leaning, and it's a girl, so I'd really be leaning into progesterone building foods. So the general rule for a scenario like this is when you fast, fast, and when you eat, eat. And that means not counting macros. So have her lean into more good fats. She's probably already doing that if she's been doing keto. Have her lean into more root vegetables, the squashes and the potatoes. Have her lean into more of the greens, more broccoli, more cruciferous, Brussels sprouts. Have her do more raw nuts and more seeds. Like, let's go back to nature's food. Now, if she starts to eat a grass-fed beef, I don't know if you're doing meat, but if she's doing meat, great, have her do more protein. She probably shouldn't be doing 50 grams of protein. She probably needs to do more like 75 or 100 grams of protein. So she's got a growing brain. She's 15. So have her lean into more meats and have her lean into more nature's foods. Now, if she starts to do that, if she starts to put weight back on, then the correction is around those carbohydrates. So she can start to bring the carbs down a little bit. Maybe she has days where she's doing more higher carb vegetables and those root vegetables that I talked about, more potatoes. And then she has days that she just maybe is doing more meats and fats and not as many of the starchier vegetables. So it's really, she needs to eat more so she doesn't lose more weight. And the protein's a good one to lean into, but she's 15. And here's what's interesting about 15 is that when a girl first starts her cycle, there is a communication that's happening between the pituitary and the ovaries. And they're getting to know each other for the first time. So if there is a lot of hormonal stress on the body during that time, she's under a lot of personal stress in the world. She's putting improper endocrine disruptors on her in makeup and hair. She's really throwing her hormones off because of stressful living. Then the ovaries and the pituitary, they don't get to know each other very well. But we can get them to connect by leaning into the foods that I just talked about. There's a really cool opportunity here for her at 15. And this is like my new premise that I want women to understand is those of us that are in menopause and postmenopause are figuring out about our hormones, we should teach that to 13-year-olds when they go into puberty so they can understand it, so they don't have to be suffering and struggling with like many of us have as we get into the menopausal years. So nature has provided some amazing foods for your daughter, Carmen. Have her lean into those and have her really clean up her chemical environment and make sure she's not eating toxic foods, but don't give up on the intermittent fasting.
Okay, and then the last little question, this is from another teenager who's on right now.
Oh, awesome.
Alan, and he's trying to do a 5-day fast.
Okay.
He's on day 4 and he's not feeling good.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about just giving yourself, talk about it's okay to break a fast? Yeah,
right. So Alan is another teenager. We should just start a YouTube live for teenagers. I love this. So he's trying for a 4-day water fast.
He's on day 4.
He's on 4 days. Yeah. So did he say how long he wanted to go?
5.
5 days, and he's not feeling really good. Okay, here's
arrhythmia, symptoms,
yeah.
Kind of stuff.
So for starters, make sure you're testing your blood sugar and you know where your blood sugar's at. I don't know what part of the world you're living in, but if you have a meter and you're underneath 50 millimoles for blood sugar, you got to break that fast. So that's the first thing that I would say. anytime we are struggling on day 4 of a fast, it's a good opportunity to ask yourself, even though your mind says to go 5 days, is it the right thing for your body to go to 5 days? So the first thing is look at the meter, understand where your ketones are at, understand where your blood sugar's at. If you don't have a meter, then the next thing I'm going to recommend if you're not feeling good is to try some fat. So try a scoop of MCT oil, try an avocado, take a scoop of nut butter. I know that can be disappointing when you're like, but I wanted to go 5 days. Here's the thing about fat is it can stabilize the blood sugar a little bit, get a little bit of nutrients into your body so that you can go that extra mile and go into that 5th day. So lean into fat a little bit and use it as a tool to see if it can carry you into the 5th day. It's not going to be the end of the world. In fact, it may be life-saving. So make sure that you know your blood sugar, lean into fats. I'm going to tell you one more hack that Dave Asprey told me on the Resetter podcast, and this one is going to be shocking to you all, and yet for Alan, this is important. If you do the fat and you're still feeling horrible in a couple of hours, you might try 1 teaspoon of raw honey. Just bring your blood sugar up a little bit. It's not going to take you out of autophagy, and it will give a little oomph to the blood sugar and to the liver so that you can make it through to that 5th day. If you do all of that and you're still feeling horrible, and maybe you do all of that within an hour period and you're like, this is not working, then you need to break the fast and start to lean into eating again. We have said this over and over again that it's dangerous when we let our minds tell us, especially in those longer water fasts, how long we should go. It's really important that sometimes our bodies say, not today. We have one of our Reset Academy members who's like dying to get to 3-day water fasts. And every time she gets to the 2nd day, her energy goes down. She gets very lethargic and her blood sugar plummets. And so we've been slowly, and this has been happening for years, we've been slowly working with her to get those mitochondria healthy enough to be able to go to that 3rd day. But this is not a time we let our educated brain lead us. This is a time where we tap into the body and we honor what it's telling us.
And
so
no
try to,
fast.
and there's no failed fast, because remember, the whole goal of fasting is to get that hormetic stress, put that body to the edge where it's like, I'm uncomfortable. Well, Alan, it sounds like your body's uncomfortable. And in that uncomfortable moment, it will build stronger. But if discomfort continues, then it's time to eat and then give it a go again. Another couple of weeks, another couple of months, try the fast again. But be smart and don't push through just because you wanted to. Hope that helps.
Okay, well, we got to wrap you up.
Okay.
We're at 37 minutes. Do you want to give some last things?
Yeah, no, you guys are awesome. Normally, I'll be here at 11 o'clock California time, and please join me in the Reset experience on Thursdays. Yeah, please join me in the Reset experience. I want the world to be healthy, and fasting is definitely a door in. And on the video tomorrow, give me comments. I'm personally going to be going in and looking at those comments. So please let me know. Did that science help? Is that kind of information that it gets you excited and motivates you? That's the kind that when I know that you guys are lighting up about the information, it motivates me and makes me want to go back to the research and dive a little deeper and understand how I can help you a little more. So you are a miracle. I will continue to say that. And there's so much you can do in this moment to turn that miracle on. So I'm cheering you on.
Okay, and we'll try to come back in and answer the questions that weren't answered.
Yeah, if your question wasn't answered, my team will come back in and make sure it gets answered. So, okay, have an awesome one, guys.